Okay, people are logging on.
Yeah.
Good morning. Welcome. Welcome, welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. There's quite a large number of people attending this webinar, so we're going to give everybody a few minutes to log on, and then we'll kick things off at 10 o'clock. So good morning, welcome. Thank you for sharing some time with us today.
We are very happy to have you here this morning.
Yes, we are. Welcome, welcome. Welcome, good morning. More and more people are logging on, Stacy, so it's good to see that people are interested in Enable accounts.
Yes, that is fantastic. Hopefully I can answer everyone's questions this morning and help them to better understand how they work.
You know, I have really enjoyed using Enable accounts. I've come across some clients who, I don't know if it's unfamiliarity or you know, what the reluctance is, but some people are a little bit resistant to Enable accounts, and I don't really understand that, because I think they've been such a fabulous tool for the vulnerable population that I serve through clients, as well as my own guardianship cases. So I think we've opened a couple of Enable accounts for the people that I serve as guardian for as well. So
yeah, I've had lots of people approach me at different presentations, or if I'm working a booth somewhere, and just be really appreciative of the Enable account. And I've heard so many stories about things that people have been able to save for and how much it's helped them. And so I love hearing those stories. That really, drives me to keep working hard on this and to do better, and make Enable all that it can be, because I love helping people, and this program definitely does that.
all right, well, it's 10 o'clock and we have a good number of people who are on with us. So I say let's kick things off and get started. Good morning, everybody. My name is Molly Blazek, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm an attorney in Omaha, Nebraska. I own Blazek Law Group, and we are a firm that specializes in guardianships and conservatorships. One of the things that we do to give back is we host monthly webinars. This is our first webinar of 2023, and we're very excited to be talking about Enable Savings Plan, because there have been some changes going into 2023. And we have Stacy here, who is the director of the program through the State Treasurer's Office. So Stacy, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and then I'm going to give a little disclaimer, and we'll go ahead and get started.
Great, thanks, Molly. Yeah, as she said, my name is Stacy Pfeifer. I'm the director of the Enable Savings Plan. I'm a little bit newer. I've been here for about a year, but I have learned things very quickly, and we've had some great changes over the last year, and so I'm very excited to share those with you, and hope everybody is as excited as I am about these new changes.
Well, I know that I am, and we really appreciate you being here with us this morning on a Saturday to go over the changes with us. So I'm going to let Stacy present on those changes while I monitor the Q&A and the chat. So we want this to be very conversational. We're going to answer questions as they come along if it's about the particular thing that Stacy is talking about. So I'll be monitoring that, and then we'll have some time at the end for questions. And we are planning on streaming this. So I just want to make sure that for all of the viewers watching the replay, this information is current as of January 14th, 2023. As always, rules and laws change. So if you have questions about Enable Savings Plan, you're always welcome to contact me or somebody at my firm, or Stacy as well at the State Treasurer's Office. And with that, we will go ahead and get started. So Stacy, thank you again for being here.
Yes, great. Thank you, Molly. All right, I hope everyone can see my screen here that I'm sharing with you. I do have a PowerPoint slide to go along with the presentation to help you be able to see these changes. And I'm going to go over Enable just in general, and then we'll kind of take a little bit more time on some of the newer items. So we'll go ahead and get started. And so the things that we're going to talk about today is the impact that Enable has on benefits, what qualified disability expenses are, who is an eligible individual, account ownership and what that means, some features of the plan, investment options, how to enroll, excuse me, and our program disclosures. Thank you. Okay, so first of all, the impact that it has to benefits. So as many people are aware, eligible individuals currently are only allowed to save around $2,000 in their name without it impacting benefits. If you use an Enable plan, that brings the balance up to $100,000 that you can save before it affects your benefits. So it's a huge advantage just on that point alone. HUD is to disregard amounts in the Enable account. One thing with housing that's important to note is that if you are paying a housing expense, you want to make sure you're spending that in the same month that you're pulling the money out of the Enable account. So that gets kind of tricky, because a lot of times housing is due like on the 1st. So you want to make sure that you're not pulling it out in December and then paying in January, because that could be considered income on your Social Security resources. So just make sure you're careful of that. Other than that, we should be good. And so any earnings or qualified withdrawals from an account are considered income to the account owner for Social Security resources. So any earnings that would come on the account, if you invested in the investment options, or if you use the savings account and there was earnings on that, that would not count against your Social Security resources. Now, if you ever have issues, like I had someone reach out to me a while ago that was having issues with HUD where they were saying, no, this does count. Feel free to get me that information, because I definitely want to know that. I reached out to that individual and sent them the information from HUD that explained that no, this does not count. So any education that I can give anyone, I'm more than happy to do. So don't be afraid to reach out and I can help you with that. Okay, so the impact to Medicaid benefits. Any assets in the Enable account are an excluded resource. They do generally still want to see those assets, so you want to include that when you're working with Medicaid, but it will not count as a resource. So, and any wages are still subject to existing Medicaid income guidelines. So, sometimes that gets a little confusing with an Enable account. There is an option where employers can put money into an Enable account directly. That will still count as your income. So you want to make sure that there's not any confusion on that. All right, and qualified disability expenses. So what are qualified disability expenses? Well, there's a whole list of things that this can be used for: education, transportation, housing, as we spoke about earlier, any employment training, any assistive technology, any personal support services, financial management or administrative services, legal fees. So, I have people that ask me a lot of questions specifically about investments and all those things. I'm not an investment specialist. I don't do any of that kind of thing. I'm not a lawyer. I always suggest that you ask the people that are much smarter than I am those questions, and they'd be more than happy to help you. And again, you can use the funds out of this account to pay them to help you. So that can work out really well. It can be used for any end of life expenses, any health prevention and wellness expenses, and any other expenses that enhance the account owner's quality of life. So as long as you can tie it to the quality of life for that account owner, then it's an allowable expense. And I know a lot of people get kind of frustrated with this list because it is so general and broad, but I do believe that Social Security tries to keep it, or the IRS, excuse me, tries to keep it general and broad because they don't want to cut, specific things out. So one very important thing to remember when you are using these funds to pay any qualified disability expenses is to make sure that you're documenting, that you're keeping documentation, that you're keeping your receipts, and so that you have that in case they do come back and ask you, what did you spend this money on? And they want to research it maybe a little further. So just make sure you're keeping good documentation of what you're spending these funds on. All right, eligible individuals. So who is eligible? Currently, anyone who has an onset of a disability prior to the age of 26 is eligible. And what that means, that doesn't mean that you have to be under 26 to open an account. We have someone who's 88 that has an account with us. Okay, so it just means that the onset of the disability has to be prior to the age of 26. And actually, at the end of last year, right on the very end of the year, we did get a bill passed on the federal level that is going to increase that age to 46. So we're very excited about that. Yes,
Passed.
yes, it did. Yes, so very excited about that. The only little bit of sadness with that is it doesn't take effect until 2026. So we have a few years, which is a bummer, but it gives us plenty of time to make sure we have everything in place and that we'll be all ready to go when we hit January 1st, 2026. But it opens it up to like 3 million more people nationwide. It opens up to veterans, which is a really great thing. So we're very, very excited about it. So keep an eye out for that in the next few years where the age will go up to 46. So in addition to that age, also you want to be entitled to receive Social Security or disability. Again, you don't have to be receiving that because you could also have a certification from a physician indicating that you've got a functional limitation that could also entitle you. So you don't have to provide that certification. We do self-certification when you're applying, but just as long as you have it in case somebody would ask for it down the line. And again, or I talked about that below where you can self-certify that. So those are the guidelines of who is eligible. If you have a question maybe about specific disabilities, if you go to our website, there is a list there that you can find that can kind of help outline some of those. So,
Stacy, we do have a question that seems, it seems like we could address it because we're kicking things off. So this attendee says, I'm a fairly new guardian. Enable has told me that in order to request funds to pay for expenses, I need to go through the court system first to get it approved. Is this correct? The Enable plan was established for my ward prior to me becoming guardian. So I think, and Stacy, if you want to respond to this, please feel free. But my guess is that the reason you're being told that is because the Enable account did exist prior to your appointment as guardian. And so one of the things that you'll have to do is show your new paperwork because the old Enable account will have to be closed and a new account will have to be opened. So I think there might be a little bit of miscommunication there about what you need to actually do. You do not have to get court permission to open an Enable account. That is not required unless you have some kind of restriction on your guardianship. So for example, sometimes people get appointed and there's a restriction on the guardianship that says that they don't have any control over their ward's estate or finances or funds. That's an example of a restriction that you would have to get lifted or removed in order to open an Enable account. But generally speaking, for the average guardian, you're not going to need to seek court approval. But the kind of caveat to that is that some people find themselves in a situation where they're either not the first guardian appointed, so the prior guardian had an Enable account that was open and they were managing, or sometimes a vulnerable adult who's now achieved age 19 maybe opened an Enable account when they were 18. And that's a byproduct of the conflict between the federal law saying you're an adult at 18 and Nebraska's law saying that you're an adult at 19. But in either of those cases, what Enable will require you to do is close the previous account and open the new account. And if there's something that is more particularized, then I suppose the court may need to get involved. But generally speaking, my experience is that that's not necessary. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I totally agree. Yeah, you just need to close the account and open a new one where you're the authorized individual, and then you should not have any issues with that. Yeah. If you have any questions about how to go about that, you can call our customer service and they can walk you through how to close the old account and open the new one. But yeah, that's going to be your best bet to get that cleared up.
Okay. All right. Great. Keep the questions coming.
Yes, that's a great question. Okay. So account ownership. The eligible individual is considered the account owner. So this is a little bit different than, say, like a college savings plan where the person who is putting the money into the account is the account owner. So the person that's eligible is always the account owner. They're the ones that have the beneficial interest in the account. They are allowed to only have one account nationwide. So in Nebraska, so ABLE is like the nationwide name of the plan, right? So every state has their own version. There's like 3 states that don't offer a plan. In Nebraska, it's called an ABLE. You are not allowed to have a plan in Nebraska and say in Kansas. You can only have one nationwide. Now, let's say the account owner moves to Kansas and would like to have their account with the Kansas one because they've done their research and maybe there's some sort of benefit to moving it. They most certainly can do that. They just roll it over into that program. Nebraska Enable is available nationwide, so they are also more than welcome to stay in the Nebraska account. And you really just have to review the plans and do whatever works best for you. So, you know, certain states only allow you to enroll in their plan if you live in that state. And maybe a benefit, they would have something more beneficial for you to open it there rather than Nebraska. Sometime maybe the parents still live in Nebraska and they're contributing to the Enable account. There are tax advantages for those parents contributing to a Nebraska Enable account. So then it might make sense for you to keep it in Nebraska. Yeah, you know, everybody's situation is different. So review all those plans and just figure out what's best for you, you know, and people across the nation for Enable, it's a very great group of people. We're all you know, kind of in this together. We're not in competition to see who has the most able accounts or anything. So, you know, we truly want what's best for the account owner. So if you have questions about different plans or anything, I'm be more than happy to get you some resources where you can research those. But yeah, so one account nationwide. Other individuals are able to open and maintain an account for the eligible individual. They're still the account owner. So that's an important thing to remember. Okay, and speaking of an authorized individual, this is a new part that just changed in November, and we're very excited about this. It's really opened up who can be the authorized individual and made it a little bit easier for opening accounts. So previously, you had to be a power of attorney or a legal guardian to be able to be the authorized individual, and there's lots of extra paperwork you had to send in, and sometimes it could get a little sticky. So now we have this entire list of people who can open an account and be the authorized individual for an account owner. So you can see that there's also a spouse, a parent, sibling, grandparent, and even representative payees. If you fall into any of these categories, you would be able to be the authorized individual for an account owner. And another important thing to remember is that this is a list, a priority list. So let's say that a grandparent wants to open an account, but a sibling would also want to be the authorized individual. So the sibling takes priority. When you're filling out forms, it's going to have a question where you have to acknowledge that, yes, I've checked with people above me on this list and there's no one else who is interested in being the authorized individual. One of the great things about this is that it kind of helps people, account owners, to be a little bit more involved in their decision making. You don't have to have that guardianship and tie down just to get the Enable account. So it's really a great thing. And like I said, we're doing self-certification on this also, so it's less paperwork. Again, you still want to have that certification and that background paperwork just in case we might request it for some reason. But in general, you just fill out the forms and be on your way. Currently, it is still a paper form you have to fill out and send in. However, we're getting very close. We had to do some extra legwork on our website to get things up and running. And on the 26th of January is when we're going to go live on our website. And you'll just be able to fill it out online. So you won't have to do anything paper at all. You'll just fill out the form online and get it submitted right away, if that's what you choose to do. You can still do it paper if you're more comfortable with that. But just another way to make things a little bit easier for people to get started on these. So this, again, was a really huge change. And so we're very excited to be able to add this to our program. Okay, so the passing of an account owner, we have lots of questions about this. So one important thing to remember is you can use end of life expenses can be part of an ABLE account. So always remember that you can use those. And then if there is still funds left over after that, there are a couple different options. It can be rolled into another Enable account. So if you have an immediate family member who also has an account, you could roll it into that person's account. And we do consider like half siblings or adoptive siblings; those are all considered family. So that could be a great thing. It could also be rolled into another ABLE program somewhere else in another state. It is also available to the estate, so it could pay out to the account owner's estate if that's what you so choose. We have a lot of people that ask about Medicaid clawback. And we actually passed a law in 2020 that said that the state of Nebraska Medicaid program will not be seeking any Medicaid clawback. So again, that's a really great thing. The Nebraska Medicaid program will not be taking any funds from your Enable account. We do have a law that we are, it should be in legislature, hopefully in the next week or so. We're just doing kind of some final steps to finalize it. But that's going to make it even a little bit easier to get it out, because right now we need like a letter of instruction or have an estate set up. And I know with smaller balances, that's not always cost effective, right? If this is all they have for their estate, that might not be the most cost effective option. So if they have a balance of under $5,000, then in the state of Nebraska with the Enable program, it could automatically pay out to a beneficiary that you would have named on your account. So that's something we've introduced this year, and we're hoping that it goes through, passes with flying colors, and then we'll send out information about that, and work on getting beneficiaries added onto accounts so that if someone does pass away, then it can pay out automatically and be even a little bit easier and faster. We know that that's a really hard time when you lose a loved one, so we want to do what we can to make it as painless as possible on our end for you. So that's something that we're working on currently. But right now, again, it is still available to the estate. And as far as like tax ramifications or anything like that, again, consult with a tax specialist and they can tell you all of those implications for these different options.
Well, and Stacy, I don't want these folks to, miss out on how big of a change it was that Medicaid is not going to benefit from these accounts anymore, because that's not the way it was when they were first created. The rules were that you could have an Enable account, but the state would let you use the money within the guidelines of the plan. But at the end of the owner's life, it would go back to pay Medicaid for all of the payments that they had made over that individual's life. And so it was huge that this provision was removed. Mm-hmm. It's still not exactly smooth because not every vulnerable adult is going to be able to have an estate from a capacity issue. Like they may not be able to create an estate plan. And so we're really grateful for Stacy to try and work on getting these beneficiary designations rolling for the accounts that are less than $5,000. And I think that also it's important at this point, at least, to note that that's probably a reason why people should also be mindful about how they're funding the account. This is something that we run into with special needs trusts as well. Like you can reach a point where the account is overfunded. And at that point, you might want to be talking to Enable or talking to an attorney or a financial advisor to find out what would be in your ward's best interest, because sometimes accounts can have too much money for that very reason. And then that's why you want to look at the other things that Stacy was just talking about, like, is there another family member who has an Enable account? Can this be part of a broader estate plan? Those kinds of things. But if you take nothing from what I just said, just know that not everybody is aware that Medicaid is not the beneficiary of these accounts anymore. And that is huge. That is huge.
Yes, it is. Yes. Thank you, Molly, for pointing that out. It is huge. And most states don't have this option. In a lot of other able programs, Medicaid is taking these funds. So Nebraska, I think, was the first to set this off. So don't quote me on that, but yeah, it was a really, Nebraska is very proud that we were able to get this through and that we can help people in this way.
Stacy, there are a couple of attendees who have asked if they can receive a copy of this PowerPoint. Is that something that is shareable?
Yes. Sure.
Okay.
Yep, I can send you that, and I've got a couple other things that I usually share after presentations that I can send to you also that you can share.
All right, so everybody will have a chance to see this again because it'll be streamed on Blazek Law Group's Facebook page. And I believe Stacy's going to share it on the Enable Facebook page. And then we'll send out this PowerPoint and then the other handouts that Stacy shares with us. So we will definitely make sure you get those.
Yeah. And it's going to be as a Adobe Acrobat program instead of as a PowerPoint, just because it's a little bit easier to share that way. So don't get thrown when it doesn't come as a PowerPoint, but it'll be the same thing. Okay, great. So flexibility. So we've kind of talked a little bit about some of these things, but as I said earlier, you can use the Enable program in any state. We don't have any restrictions on where you live. As long as it's in the United States, you can use this program. Anybody can contribute to an Enable account. We have an online gifting platform that makes it really easy to contribute. That's one of the things that I'm going to be sending to Molly. It's kind of just a little one-page simple instructions. So when you have an Enable account, everybody has an online account that they have access to. And so on that online account, there's a spot where you can click and you can get what's called a UGift code. So UGift is the name of our platform for gifting. And so everybody has a UGift code. If you're maybe not uber technology driven, then you can call into our customer service and they can give you your UGift code also. But then once you have that code, you just go to our UGift Able website and type in the code and put in the amount you want to give, and it goes into their account. Super easy. And so, and the code is like an easy thing to share. Maybe you're doing a fundraiser or something, or you want to ask for a Christmas or a birthday gift. You can just share that code on your social media or wherever, and they can use that to send you a gift. So very easy. And with that code, there's also some instructions. Maybe again, if people don't want to give online, you could mail a check in, or there's some other options as well with that. So, but it's very easy. Again, it covers a wide range of disability expenses, so that makes it much more flexible than some of the other options that people might have. Money can be moved from one account to another. As far as the beneficiaries, which we just spoke about. And you can withdraw the money at any time. So, there could be taxes or penalties associated with that if you're not using it for the qualified disability expenses, but it's not locked up that you can't withdraw it. So that makes it, very flexible and user friendly. Fees, we try to keep our fees as low as we can. Currently, there's a service charge of $45 per year, which comes out to $11.25 per quarter. And then there's some asset-based fees also, so that depends on which option for investments that you choose, those fees. But that's it. There's no enrollment fees, there's no investment changes, no transfer fees, no distribution fees. With the checking account, there's kind of some fees that you would get with any checking account, ATM usage and those kind of things. But we keep our fees as low as we can. Again, talking about the ease of contribution. So when you first open the account, you need to contribute a minimum of $50. Unless you're signing up for a payroll deduction, or if you have an automatic payment coming out, then that could be lowered to $25. And subsequent contributions, again, need to be $25 unless you've got an automatic payment coming in or a payroll deduction, then it could be less. Again, anyone can contribute to the account. The contributions can be set up through the UGift that we talked about. You can mail a check, do wire transfers, electronic fund transfers, payroll deductions. just tons of different options, whatever you're most comfortable with. You can set it up as a bill pay from your bank. Again, and another new thing this year is our annual contribution limit that went up to 17,000. So the annual contribution limit is the amount of money that you can contribute to an Enable account each year. They do have a cap on the amount you can put in each year. It was 16,000 last year, and it went up to the 17,000 as of January 1st. Now, there is another limit. We have a program called Able to Work. And so there's a form on our website you can fill out, a very simple form. That can add an additional $13,590 as of January 1st in Nebraska to that contribution limit. So it almost doubles it. And that's if somebody's working and they don't have a retirement plan to put into. This kind of substitutes for that retirement plan. And again, you could work with employers, so if you're working for an employer and they have a retirement that you can't participate in, you could approach your employer and say, well, I do have this. Could you put that money in here instead of in your retirement plan? And so that could be an option. Again, it is important to remember that could count as income still. So you got to look at that when you're thinking about those things. But that is another option, and that raises the amount for the contribution limit.
Stacy, there's a question about how many transactions can be made from the account per month. Would this be a good time to address that?
Sure. Yeah, there's not a cap on how many transactions can be made.
Okay. Is that for each account type?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Okay. We do have a number of questions. Maybe now would be a good time to pause and start answering some of them.
Sure.
So this attendee is asking, he has an older ward who's receiving Medicare and Medicaid benefits, and he began receiving SSI, but then it switched to SSDI, but now receives Medicare and Medicaid with the SSDI. He's never had an Enable account before, so is he still eligible to sign up for the plan now?
Yep. As long as you fit those guidelines that the disability incurred before the age of 26, you can open it anytime.
And that actually is a good contrast to a special needs trust. As I'm looking through the Q&A, there are a couple of questions about special needs trust. I think I said that word, and so now everybody's wondering about special needs trust. And just an easy distinction right away is between the two is when you're dealing with somebody's own money. In the law, we typically call that first party money. It's a buzzword. We're talking about first party money. It means somebody's personal income. It's money that they own, they got. It's not a gift. When you're dealing with first party money and you are over age 65, you cannot create a special needs trust for yourself. And that is what makes Enable advantageous to creating a special needs trust, perhaps to the attendee who was just answering this or asking this question that we just answered. So that's one way to distinguish between the two. But there are a lot of things that go on in an assessment about whether or not you need a special needs trust or you need an Enable account, or perhaps part of the planning would involve both. But an attendee kind of on the same topic is asking, can money in a previously established special needs trust be transferred into the Enable account? And you're not going to like my answer because it's an attorney answer, and it depends. But the answer is meaningful because it can. There's no reason. I mean, there's to my knowledge, Stacy, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's really no prohibition on the source of money. I mean, any source of money, legal money, can be, put in an Enable savings plan account. But the better question is, should it? So sometimes we're dealing with special needs trusts that are funded with third party money. So that's different than first party money. That's somebody else's planning, that's somebody else's gifting. You may not want to do that for estate planning purposes. And so it really becomes a question about the broader picture of what somebody's entire financial scope looks like, how old they are, what their disability is. And so it's hard to answer just kind of without knowing more detail, but the short answer is any money can be deposited within an Enable savings plan. From there, I think you need to talk to somebody who's well versed in all of these arenas to try to help plan for what's best for the vulnerable adult. Another attendee is asking what's the difference between a special needs trust and an Enable savings account. You know, functionally, they're very similar because they pay for a lot of the same things, but there are distinctions between the two. And a lot of it comes down to whose money is being put in the Enable account. And sometimes cost is a factor too. You know, Enable is a really good alternative to creating a special needs trust because it costs money to create a special needs trust. You know, you have to pay an attorney several $1,000s, perhaps more, to create that trust plan and to get it funded and to set it up for you. And so Enable is a really, really good alternative because there isn't that barrier. Now, sometimes it won't always work like that. Sometimes you need a special needs trust, maybe in tandem with an Enable account. But one of the reasons that I sort of in my practice lean towards Enable accounts more for first party money anyway, is because there isn't that barrier to creation like there is with a special needs trust. Oh, this is a good one, and it's easy, Stacy. To open an Enable account, where can this be done?
Yes, so you just go, that is a very easy question, thank you. So you go to our website, which is enablesavings.com. And there's a big green button that says enroll, and there's all kinds of resources. We also have a program disclosure statement that explains all the ins and outs. We try to put it in as plain of language as we can. That makes it a little bit easier to understand, rather than something in like legalese, you know, that you have no idea what it means. So we always encourage you to read that before you set up the account. But yes, if you go to our website, again, it's enablesavings.com. That's where you can get started.
Okay, let's do one more and then we'll continue on and we'll come back to more questions
Sure.
as we continue. So the last one is there a minimum amount on the UGift contribution?
Just that $25 is the minimum.
Okay. All right. Okay, keep the questions coming. We're going to continue on with Stacy's presentation and we'll check back and answer some more in a little bit.
Yeah, I love all the questions. That's great. Okay, so tax benefits. You know, this is another big thing that a lot of people have questions about. So for the account owner, and again, we talked about this a little bit earlier, any earnings on the account are tax deferred while it's in your account. And as long as you use it for those qualified disability expenses, it's tax free. So another great perk to this, this program. And also in the state of Nebraska, those who contribute to an Enable account and files a Nebraska state income tax is eligible to receive a Nebraska state income tax deduction up to $10,000 or $5,000 if you're married filing separately. So that's another great perk of having it, the Enable account in Nebraska. And again, if they use that UGift, that counts as a contribution. That's tax deductible. I have had people, we've had some issues with the, you know, kind of nuts and bolts of the contributions and getting that tax deduction. So I really have been pushing this UGift because that's a way that we're processing it through where we know it's going to get in that third party contribution box when it goes to the Department of Revenue, and we can make sure that you can get your tax deduction. An issue I've come across right after I started, because I started last February, so it was like right in the, you know, heart of tax time. Some people, because they're the authorized individual, you know, they have access to the person's account. So let's say it's a parent and a child, right? So the parent is putting their bank information on the account as the account owner, and they are contributing the funds that way through like an automated payment. But when you're putting that on as an account owner, then that's going to show the Department of Revenue this was an account owner's contribution, not a third party. And so that's kind of, I can usually, if you are having issues with that, I can usually work it out with the Department of Revenue. If it gets to me, I can help you get that straightened out. But that's one of the reasons why I've been pushing this UGIF, because it does then show that it's a third party contribution and can help you on your state income tax deduction. So that's an important thing to remember. If you've had issues in the past where the Department of Revenue, maybe declined your tax deduction because of that, definitely don't just like throw up your hands and say, oh, I'm not going to try again. Get in contact with me, and I can get that fixed for you. So we definitely want people to take advantage of this tax deduction. We wouldn't have it if we didn't think it was a good thing. So do what you can to make sure that we're getting you that tax deduction. Okay. And so now we're going to move on to investment options. We've got 5 different options. The first 3 are a target risk option. This would be, like your 401k type investments, things that are going to go into the stock market and such. So these 3 options, you do have a good chance of gaining money, but you also have a chance of losing money. So this is a good time to talk to someone, again, who's smarter than I am about investments, and they can help you figure out what's best for you. And it really depends on the person and what your goals are, which investments you want to choose as well. We use Vanguard mutual funds for these 3 options. And there's, the growth, the moderate, and the conservative. Again, depending which you choose, there could be a higher potential for return, but also a higher potential for risk or lower. So again, talk with someone who is smart with their money and can help you kind of guide you through this. And then the other 2 options we have are a savings account option and a checking account option. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with a savings account and a checking account. And the savings, I've also been working really hard on our savings account option this year. We've done some things to get that interest rate up, and we have some more things coming on the way. I just got approved last month to switch to a different bank that's going to give us a much better interest rate and be much more in touch with like the market and do better. So I'm very excited about that. That change is going to come later on this year once we get all the administrative stuff in a row. But we're very excited for that and to be able to get a better return for you on that savings account option than we have in the past. So that'll be another great change. The checking account option has a debit card attached to it, and you can write checks as well. So, these 2 options are good for short-term investment type stuff. Again, you can speak with an advisor that can help you figure out what is best. I know there have been issues with the checking account option and with guardianship. So we do have a manual workaround for debit cards because sometimes guardians have issues. They have something written into their guardianship where they can't have cash, right? So the debit card has an ATM option attached to it. So there is a manual workaround. You can call our customer service and ask that they turn off that ATM option, and so you can only use the debit card at point of sale places. So that gets rid of that cash issue and will allow for guardianships to be able to use that debit card. So so it is a thing, but you got to ask for it. The other thing that is really new is we have a form, and it's on our website under resources, I do believe. Yeah, and under forms. And so this again is with co-guardians. So if you have a co-guardianship, sometimes there's an issue with doing the checking account option at all because of the nature of the co-guardianship. So we have a form, and there's actually 2 forms, and it depends how your co-guardianship is worded. So we kind of have little explanations attached to each form. So read that and read your paperwork carefully. Again, you can ask an attorney if you need help figuring out what to fill out. But the form essentially says that you guys can work independently of each other, and you don't need both signatures to be able to perform your duties, and that allows for that checking option. So those are kind of some important things with guardianship. in the checking account. So, okay, oops. All right, and then, so then when you're selecting investments, once you've discussed things with your financial advisor and you know which investments you want to use, then you can go ahead and you're filling out your application. This will be one of the steps. It'll ask you which ones you would like to use. And you don't have to do 100% in one of these. You could pick a little bit of all of them if you wanted. So you just basically fill out the boxes of what percentage you'd like of your payments to go into what category, and any payments that come in. So any payments from the employer, anything that comes through that you gift, any way that the money comes in, it's going to be split in the way that you've chosen for it to come in. So you have complete control over how your money is invested. And so that's really a great thing. Now, let's say you're opening an account and you're like, I don't know what I want to do. So I'm just going to put it on the savings account option for now, because that's a safe choice. And you know, that's what you want to do. But then maybe later on, you have had time to speak with a financial advisor and discuss your goals. And you think, oh, well, maybe I want to put half into one of these other options, a moderate option. Then you are allowed to make investment changes twice per calendar year. So, and there's no like window, you know, like with insurance or anything like that, where you have to do it in. You can do it any time of the year. There's just a twice per year cap on it. So, so, you know, if you're opening it and you're not sure what to put it in, you can just start with one, and then later on, after you've done more research, you can go and switch it. Yeah, so that's that. All right, and as far as enrolling, we've touched a little bit on this. So you can go to our website, and again, we always encourage people to read the program disclosure statement, because that's going to give you all your vital information and explain everything in detail to you. And then you can go to enrolling. Again, starting January 26th, you'll be able to just fill the form out online. And get that paperwork filled out and submit it online, or you can print off the paper form if you'd like. You're more than welcome to do that. You can mail that in also. And the enrollment's pretty simple. You know, you're inputting your information. If you're an authorized individual, then you're going to add that information as well. Pick your investment options. Pick how you're going to put money into the account. The delivery options refer to your notices that you're going to receive. So we have a quarterly statement that goes out. So you can pick if you want to have it emailed to you or if you want to have it mailed to get you a paper copy. So that's what that refers to. And then you just review all your information and submit. So easy peasy. All right, and so here's all our information for the website is, again, enablesavings.com. We've got a Facebook page also, and here's our customer service phone number. Our website also has an email, if you prefer email over calling, and they would respond to you in that way as well. And so, you know, we've got lots of ways that you can contact us, whatever works best for you. And yeah, and so Molly has my contact information. So if ever you are in need of that, she can get that for you. But I do always encourage people to try customer service first and see if they can help you. I am a one-person show here in the treasurer's office. I'm the director and I wear lots of different hats. So I'm working really hard to make this program as good as I can, you know, and as easy to use as I can. If anybody ever has any questions or suggestions for making things easier, or maybe you have like roadblocks, I'd love to hear them and see if there's some way that I can help or make that work better for you. But I'm like, you know, always doing those things. So I definitely want to help you if you're stuck and you need the help. Definitely contact me. But I do encourage you to try that customer service first, because they can be super helpful as well. And sometimes they know the answers and I don't. So yeah, so alrighty. And so we are the trustee and the program manager here at the treasurer's office. The Nebraska Investment Council is oversight for our investments. And yeah, so, and then we've got our ever exciting disclosure statements. Again, you know, we always want you to speak with professionals when you're trying to figure these things out, and they can definitely help you and answer any questions that you might have. And again, there's always a chance that things could lose money if, depending what investment you choose. So we always want to make sure that you're aware of those things. So, alrighty, and I think that's about the entirety of my presentation. So we can have these last 12 minutes or so for any more questions.
And we have some, so.
Awesome.
All right, so there are a couple of travel questions. And I think you and I have talked about vacations, using Enable funds for vacations before. And the first question is, does travel count for quality of life? What if the travel is an incentive for good behavior? And I think we can take the second question on travel at the same time.
Okay.
This attendee says, we are planning a vacation and we are wondering if we can use our daughter's Enable funds to pay for her expenses, including airline tickets, travel expenses, etc. If we can use her money from Enable account to pay for her portion, what category would we put it under as a qualified disability expense?
Yep. So, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So, yeah, so that falls under that quality of life. I don't know about you, but a vacation would certainly improve my quality of life. So, so we would put it under that. There have been people that use it for vacation. So yes, that is a thing that is allowed.
Okay. I tend to take a little bit more of a reserved approach, just because it's a little unclear on how the IRS will treat a vacation. So I think that the best answer to meet in the middle is just make sure that the vacation has some sort of like educational component or something. Like, I worry that the IRS would not approve like a cruise and it's to Mexico, and I don't know, just I get worried that they won't approve things unless it's tethered to another qualified disability expense. So education tends to be one that we often talk to people about. So if you could do some type of activity on the vacation that would be educational in nature, I think it would bolster the argument if the IRS ever had a concern about the vacation being not for a qualified disability expense. And that's just, probably more fear-based, just because I worry about that as an attorney. But I completely agree with Stacy that vacations do go to quality of life, and they should all be approved. I just worry that they won't be. The next question is, my guardianship includes accounting. Would an Enable account be something that I'm required to show in my report? And the answer is yes. That needs to be included in the annual report.
Yep.
This is a good one, Stacy, for you. For Enable savings account setup, I live in Missouri, but my ward is in Nebraska. So which state should I apply for?
And again, going to check out Missouri's account and just kind of reviewing the differences is going to be my best suggestion, and seeing what works best for your situation, not knowing any more than that. Again, looking at if your ward is going to have people from Nebraska that are going to contribute to the account, that might be something to take into consideration with the tax deduction. But yeah, I would go and review the program disclosure statements for both states' programs and just compare them and see what works best for you. I'm not sure if Missouri's, like I said, some states you have to be living in that state. So if that's the rule for the Missouri one, then obviously he wouldn't be eligible for that one. So so just reading both program disclosure statements is going to be your best bet, and deciding what the best option for your ward is based on the two programs.
And one thing to consider on that is that Enable is probably more well-versed in Nebraska's court forms. So that's another thing to think about when you're going to create an account perhaps in another state, is that they're going to be getting court documents from a state that they're unfamiliar with, and that might cause some delay or some, just some unforeseen problem that you wouldn't likely have with Enable, who sees these court forms all the time.
Yes, yeah, me and Molly have done extensive work with our administrator to make sure that the paperwork it has been all kind of worked out and everything. So
All right, so what happens if the growth options take the balance over the $100,000 limit?
so over 100,000 is when it could start affecting your benefits. Now, sometimes there's a little confusion. So the Enable plan, our limit is not 100,000. Our limit is actually 400,000. So you can have up to $400,000 in an Enable plan. The 100,000 is just the limit where it starts affecting your benefits. So with the $400,000 limit, if the growth takes it above the 400,000, then it can grow above that. You wouldn't be able to contribute any more money to it, but it could still go over 400,000 with the earnings.
Okay. This question goes back to the bank change that you were talking about. Do participants need to do anything with respect to the change of bank?
Nope. So once we get that put in place, we will send a notification out to you, obviously, so you're aware of the change, but there shouldn't be anything for you to do on your side. It'll all be kind of like background administrative stuff that we're going to be switching over. So nothing for you to do, but we will send you notifications so you're aware of the time that it does change. And yeah.
This attendee emailed a question, and this is about the guardian's name appearing on the checking account of the special needs person. Will that count as income for the guardian? And that answer is no, unless we're talking about something way kind of outside of the scope of what we're discussing today. If you're acting as a fiduciary for anybody, whether that's under like a rep payee appointment, power of attorney, guardian, or as an authorized individual from an Enable plan, your income is unaffected by the participant's income. You're just acting as an agent. I mean, that's essentially what you are. It just, who makes you the agent kind of changes, and your powers kind of change through each scenario. But if you're a fiduciary, your income is not impacted by the person that you are acting for. This question next asks, can money from our child's checkbook be used for the savings account option without any backlash? That way we can keep it lower than the $2,000 threshold. Do we have to report this as income? And I think that this example presented in this question is the best way to highlight an Enable savings plan account. That's the entire purpose of the Enable account. The reason that it might be attractive to somebody, that could change from case to case, but the most traditional scenario that somebody is looking at an Enable account for is they're over resources. A lot of people who are special needs or vulnerable, or they have intellectual disability or developmental disability, or they have been injured and now have a resulting disability. A lot of what their life consists of is staying under a resource threshold. So in order to maintain supplemental Social Security insurance, your resources have to be lower than $2,000 per month, which means you can never have more than $2,000 per month. For Medicaid, there's a different resource limit. That's $4,000 per month. And sometimes these things adjust depending on what combination of resources a person has. But these are the two typical examples: Social Security, insurance, and then Medicaid. And if that's the case, the lower of the two controls. And so when you're in a situation and somebody's receiving benefits and they're not spending their monthly benefit amount, it accrues. And once you get that ceiling of $2,000, you now risk losing both of those benefits, the Social Security benefit and the Medicaid benefit. And Enable's whole purpose is to make that not happen. So it allows for people who would ultimately never have been able to save money, and they'd have to constantly spend their money to stay under that ceiling. They now don't have to do that. So there are other questions that kind of came in that talked about, when would an Enable account not make sense for somebody? And why would I want an Enable account? And it's hard to really answer that for an individual's perspective, because Stacy and I don't know the unique needs of the person, that's involved in your guardianship or that you're providing care for. But ultimately, Enable's whole goal is to provide people who would have never otherwise been able to save money and have it not disqualify them from their benefits. So a really good example that we've just had recently in our lives is the stimulus money that came from the COVID-19 pandemic. Nobody expected that money. And thankfully, it wasn't countable as a resource when the money was received. But a lot of people chose to open Enable accounts to hold those excess funds so that when the period of time expired and it would start counting as a resource, you were able to save it without having to spend it. Because the other alternative is spending money on things that you maybe don't need because you just have to get rid of it. And I know it seems kind of silly to say this, but sometimes it's hard to spend money. I mean, there's not you have to be careful about what you purchase. And sometimes you have so much money that it's very difficult to spend it in a meaningful way in a short period of time to qualify somebody. So enter Enable. And I think Enable has been a wonderful thing for a lot of the people that I work with. This next question is, if you already have a special needs trust, are there advantages to keeping it open over an Enable account? Again, it just depends on the source of the money, the goals of the trust. It's Enable, in my opinion, is more appropriate for first party money and not third party money, but that's just an opinion. People are saying that this is great, and they're thanking you for being here, Stacy.
Great, I'm glad to be here.
If anybody has questions about Enable, I would highly recommend going to their website because it is a wealth of information. I go to their website and utilize information from my clients there all the time. The forms are available there. If you have any last questions, now would be the time because it's 11 o'clock and we're going to be signing off soon.
Mm-hmm. And we do, on our website, we also have a quarterly newsletter that we post there. And on the Facebook page, I try to, post updates or reminders or talk about, like tax incentives or talk about some different things. I did, refer to the $17,000 increase when that came across. And so you can kind of keep in all those different areas that I spoke about earlier for connection. You can follow those places to keep up on information.
All right. I think the other questions that I haven't answered are kind of fact specific things. So I would invite anybody who has an unanswered question to either reach out to my office or to reach out to Stacy or check out the Enable website. And again, I'll send to everybody who registered for this webinar a copy of the PowerPoint. We'll send it as a PDF and then some additional resources from Stacy. And we will let everybody get on with their Saturday. We thank you, Stacy, so much for joining us on a Saturday to talk about Enable. I'm grateful that the Enable contribution limit continues to increase. I'm grateful that we can now have co-guardians who can manage the account together, and things are just moving in the right direction. And it's really to your leadership. So thank you for that. And we look forward to working with everybody who's going to be opening an Enable account. And next month, we are going to be having our webinar on how to complete the Packet A annual report. So watch for that. If you are not on our mailing list, the easy way to do that is to go to our website, blazeklawgroup.com, join our mailing list. You'll get an invitation to next month's webinar. And with that, Stacy, I think I'm going to sign us off. Everybody's saying wonderful things. A very good presentation, informative. And they're thanking you. So, all right.
Well, thank you to everybody for taking the time to come and listen to this morning. I appreciate that as well.
Yep. All right. Take care. Happy Saturday. Thank you for everything that you do on behalf of the vulnerable population in Nebraska. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.